Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Contour community meeting. Thank you all for joining today. We got a bunch of things that we want to go through today. Of course, we want to talk about the latest release, the 1.2.0 release and the 1.2.1 release. Michael wants to chat a bit about the CNCF explanation as well. Then Nick will talk about some service APIs. So let's kick things off, and I'll share my screen. Who wants to start to talk about the newest release?
Well, I guess I'll take the start. So yes, Contour 1.2 was released a little while ago now, and the blog post came out yesterday. Thanks to Steve and Jonas for sorting it out. The two main features are the hot reload of certificates for Contour with thanks to Tero that allows Contour, the gRPC TLS certificates for Contour to be rotated without restarting Contour. The other feature is the Envoy Shutdown Manager, which will allow Envoy to drain before closing. So we shouldn't see as many when you're upgrading. So we shouldn't see as many drop connections, hopefully, when you're upgrading. Those are the two big features. But yeah, so Steve, over to you.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say in the blog post, Jonas, if you could pop to that, there's actually I recorded a video that walks through the Shutdown Manager. So I actually spin up a cluster, fire a bunch of traffic at it, and then change Envoy. So we want to go and roll the Envoy pods, and then you can actually see we have a new dashboard panel in the Grafana dashboards, which shows the active listeners or active connections to each listener in Envoy. So you can actually see, pod A is going to shut down. It gets the hook, and then traffic peels away from that pod, and then the Shutdown Manager watches it, and then it kills it and terminates. And then, if you're interested, you can watch that video, and it'll walk through that. It's always fun to watch, see how it works, in real live. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Yeah. So that sounds like it's more than just for upgrades. It's like if you're removing Envoy nodes to your cluster, it sounds like that's useful there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you need to change Envoy, if you said if you had to patch your nodes and roll them around or whatever, this would help apply the same logic.
Yeah, it's an awesome feature. Yeah, thanks again, Steve, for building it. Well, I guess, yeah, M2, is there any updates on the CNCF donation?
So no updates on the CNCF donation, and the fact that today at the TOC call, they mentioned that, their sig-networking is undergoing a review. I've been swamped with other things. I haven't had the chance to finish up the doc they sent me. So that's all on me. I'm trying to find some time, but it's been hard.
No problem.
Is it blocked on you, or it sounds like sig-networking is the next step?
We were blocked on them until last Monday, I believe, or Tuesday, and now it's blocked on me.
Okay, so is the review complete?
No, they started on it. They did the initial due diligence. It looked good, and now they sent me a document to fill out.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
So now I have to fill out that document for them, and I haven't had a chance to do that. I need to. But yeah, it was blocked on them for maybe 3 weeks or so. They eventually finished looking at the stuff that I sent them, and then they gave me a document and said, well, go ahead and fill this out. And Lee and I chatted yesterday, and I told him, dude, I'm sorry, it's been a week. I haven't done it yet, but I need to.
Awesome. Thanks very much, M2. Thanks for popping open the thing there, Jonas, to remind me that I forgot to mention release 1.2.1, which is to address these CVEs that you can see on the screen for Envoy. Some of them are highs, so we wanted to make sure that we get this addressed as soon as possible. As always, we need to update Envoy as soon as this comes out because Envoy only supports the most recent version. So this release 1.2.1 has 0 code changes and literally only updates the manifests to point to the newer version of Envoy. Everything, as long as if you're running 1.2 already, then the only thing you need to do is to apply the changes to your Envoy deployment or daemon set. And if you are running an older version and you want to upgrade, please just go straight to 1.2.1.
No other changes at all between 0.0 and 0.1 release. Awesome.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. So with respect to the next release, the next release will be 1.3. We're still working on exactly what will be in that release. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was that, yes, support for the service APIs objects, the new objects, is currently in master behind an experimental service APIs flag. So if you add the service APIs CRDs to your cluster from the service APIs repo, then you will, you'll get you'll be able to run Contour with that and see the objects be added and removed. That's all it does at the moment because the behavior is not fully defined by the service API subproject, but I wanted to make sure that that stuff was out in front and was present.
So is this something that you'll be working on for the next couple of releases here, or?
Yes, so this will be worked on as the service APIs project continues and the behavior of the object is defined. We have a base now that we can build the functionality in and as it goes without having to start from how do we wire up all of this stuff into Contour. That work is all done, and as we define the behavior, we can use Contour as a test bed to test how the behavior works in a real reverse proxy deployment.
Some of the our contribution upstream is that we're both active in the SIGs and also have said we want to integrate these types into Contour as soon as possible because we've built an architecture that lets us support multiple Ingress documents. We already have 3 at the moment, so one more isn't going to hurt, and we get some real world testing of, like, let's be honest, every specification that's been developed in isolation of an implementation, not so good. So the opportunity to road test these ideas as SIG, as the service API SIG is developing them, is going to be better for everybody.
Agreed. Yeah. So so that is in master right now. It will be included in 1.3. But as I said, it's all behind an experimental feature flag. So if you don't want to use them, then, and as long as you don't supply the feature flag, then you won't even notice. So I guess that's pretty much all we've got. Does anyone else have anything else this time?
Yeah, should we do any, should we do some time box bug triage?
We can.
Cool. So I guess, how should we slice up this?
Is new font time, you mean?
Yeah. So yes, to have a look through the idea is just to spend 10 minutes or so looking through some of the showing the community the board and showing them and doing some triage on some of the issues that we haven't looked at yet.
Sounds great. Do you want to share your screen?
Sure. Give me a moment to pull up the board. Okay, so can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, so we did a bit of a prioritization exercise the other day. Oh, great! Is my Chrome not being helpful when it comes to. Awesome. Nice work, Hub.
Hey Nick, since we only have about 10 minutes right now, and there's nobody in the community that's on, maybe it's worthwhile to kind of look at a couple that are kind of burning a hole in our pocket from a discussion standpoint, and maybe look into those. Could that be a better alternative?
Yeah, probably. I think so. Does anyone have anything that they want to talk about?
Yeah, I do. So we look at first that issue 2264.
2264?
Yep, right there in front of you.
Yep. Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, so I mean, I can give a little bit of a very quick background. So we have one that's basically failing some of their interaction with Contour because of a timeout that already exists in Envoy as a configurable option. Contour put a default option there that seems to be fairly short for their environment. So one of the things that David Cheney had recommended, saying, well, if we update this timeout to 1.2 seconds, which seems to be kind of the max for this TCP handshake. And Nick, I know you had some thoughts about, my personal, me as Michael was thinking, what if we just create a custom build of Contour with an increased timeout? It doesn't have to be 1200 milliseconds. It could be some other value, maybe 500 or 600, and see, does that work in that environment? Is that threshold? It seems their environment is slower. If that option is not the one we want to take, is there an alternative that you guys as maintainers are thinking is a bit more appropriate course of action?
So the concern that I have is that in full disclosure, I picked the value of 250 milliseconds entirely arbitrarily on the first day because we needed to have that. It needed a value, so I just made up a value. And with respect to values 1200, 600, 500, we're all just guessing. And guessing by shipping Docker images to people and saying, does this work? That's also guessing. We don't know what the underlying cause is. Remember, this is just the timeout on binding the socket. It's got nothing to do with actually sending the request over there. So I do have a real concern that we're fixing the wrong thing.
Are you sure that's true? They Envoy documents it as including time to complete the TLS handshake as well.
If you use TLS, but this is towards the back end.
Which can be TLS.
Which it could be HTTP, which is literally just opening the socket. Like I say, we're just guessing.
Yeah.
But it could be TLS as well, right? Like we don't distinguish.
It could be, yes. Yes, we don't distinguish, but we have no way of knowing. And so
well, actually we do. It's in the Envoy stats. Can we get a dump of the Envoy stats from the customer?
So let's add that in the questions that they can get for us to get a dump of the Envoy stats. But don't finish up your message though. Is there anything else that we need to understand from this environment? I mean, it is conceivable there are some environments that are slower either because of network pipe and not being there. There's latency. We don't know how everything is configured. And one of the things that I always wanted to avoid is that it's good to have sensible defaults, but allow them to be configured because we can't be experts in every single environment configuration out there. Now, I understand the thing that this timeout cannot be too huge because there's certain things that are going to break or it's going to mask real issues. Understandable. But, Envoy already did not make this a hard-coded value. It's a configurable option for a reason.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the reason that this is configurable is because in the different use cases where Envoy can be put to, you do need different values. Most of the time when the original authors of Envoy are using it, it is used in a sidecar where a lot of the connections to and from Envoy are over localhost, and so it should be very short. We are using it as a reverse proxy, so the timeouts are different. This has happened to us many times before. I do as I said to you privately, I do think that I mean, 1.2 seconds and 250 milliseconds is not that different. It's probably not a big deal. But the thing that we need to be careful about doing is that we're not like, is that we're not like making a problem for ourselves further down the road by doing this. I don't think it's likely that we are, but that's the question we need to ask ourselves every time we allow a value to be configured. We also allow people to do silly things with the value if they don't know better. Like they might be like, well, I just want this to always work, so I'm going to set it to 5 minutes. And because a lot of people will do that. They're like, I just want this problem to go away and never come back. And there's probably costs to doing that we as the subject matter expert should be making people aware of. And that's one of the reasons that I don't like.
Well, for example, if you disable all the timeouts, you'll quickly run out of file descriptors on your shared proxy, which is handling the traffic for your entire cluster. It allows one customer to DOS everyone else.
Yeah, so that's the reason why we need to be careful about it. I think in this case, it's probably not a big deal, but it's the reason why we need to think carefully each time that we allow it to be fiddleable.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'd argue that there's kind of two reasons here. So the reason I would want something to be configurable is firstly because I need it in my environment. So that's I have some evidence-based process that I've gone through, and I know that I need a specific value. But the second reason is that I can use a tunable to eliminate a path of possibilities from my triage process. So I can use it to explore, is connect timeout really a problem, really the problem that I'm seeing, and I can tune it and eliminate that whole path of possibilities. So there's kind of, so I see that having a tunable gives you really two different purposes. It's kind of got two different use cases there.
And as far as having a tunable, there are a bunch of different ways to do it. I think, I don't remember if it was Dave or Nick said you could DOS all of the other folks. I think there was an assumption there that you could set the tunable on at a very precise or granular level. We could also add a tunable to the command line that only the cluster admin can touch. So then there needs to be a social contract between the people who actually want to mess with this value and someone who's responsible for the cluster's health. So, and the command line option does not increase the surface area of the HTTP proxy document in a way that we are always trying to avoid.
Yeah, so I think in this case, the connect timeout is, as far as I can't remember if it is a connection manager specific property or if it's Envoy wide. I would say probably we would want to say, unless you have a really good reason why you want different ones per thing, we would just set it contour wide. And so it would be a cluster level concern, not a HTTP proxy change. Yeah, I need to look into it more. But so I think the process for this is, I can see what you're saying, James, that it is useful in this case for diagnostic purposes. I would say I would like to see a stats dump from the customer. Maybe they might need to share it with us privately, but a stats dump from the customer who has this problem, and then see like how long is it actually and then we can make the change in master, and they can if they want to run a build with it to test, they can use master to test, and then if we need to change it, we change it again. We have a master Docker image available that people can use to test, so we don't need to ship specific versions. We can just change it in master. If it's good enough for this one person, it should be good enough for everybody.
Right, so Nick, can you, let's not spend like too much time on this. Can you add your questions to the ticket for them to give you a stats dump? Ask a question, like I'm assuming the stats dump will tell you if they're using SSL in the backend or not. Is there anything else that we need to know about the environment? Like what kind of questions can we ask? And I don't know to what extent the customer or even the other folks will be able to answer us, but is there anything else that we can ask? Sorry, not answer.
I mean, there are plenty of things we can ask, but some of them like may or may not be relevant. Like, where is your cluster running? What is the CNI that you are using? That sort of stuff. Because all of those things can impact on the amount of time it takes for one pod to connect to another. You know, like
What,
this. I mean,
why is your application slow? Is it expected? Is that how it's designed? Does it expect to have a 5-second connection delay, or are you as an operation team forced in a position where you have to work around a broken application, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So
I guess a key question there is, if they're using traditional Kubernetes ingress, how long does the handshake take? Is that what you're asking, that you want to find out?
There is no defined answer to that.
Yeah, there's no way to know. I think I guess the thing to ask is just the specific questions. I will have a think about that and write that up later today. So I guess my short term thing is, yes, we'll increase the default timeout to 1200 milliseconds, since it's a arbitrarily chosen number anyway. And we'll ask for more data from the specific customer. And if they have some edge case reason and they really, really need it, then we'll look at putting in the setting to change it. I mean, again, we need to decide. We need to look at the setting. Dave, sorry.
Where did 1200 come from? Whose butt did we pull that out of?
It looks like it came from
point.
a comment that you said when you said 1,000 to
me,
1,200 milliseconds tops is the most we can reasonably support.
So we shouldn't change from one arbitrary value that I chose to another arbitrary value without any supporting evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
all that will mean is we'll just change it again.
Yeah. So that's why we need that. That's why we need the information. Sorry, that is a better way to say it. Thank you, Dave. I'm okay with changing the default value if we can, but we need some information about how long it's actually taking to do this. Practically, if in their use case, we might need to, as Michael says, give them a build with some arbitrarily large number so that we can find out the actual numbers for how long it takes.
That's exactly what I'm looking for. So, because otherwise, how would they figure out how long it takes? I mean, that's why I asked earlier, can they use something else to tell us how long the handshake would take? And if there is no real answer, then make it big enough, figure it out what it looks like in their environment, and let's figure out the why behind it. But please, Nick, add the questions you have here, and let's.
Yeah, I will. I'll add those questions there, and let's move on to something else.
Cool. Well, we have about 3 minutes left, so.
Yeah, so I think that's probably, unless anyone has anything else burning. The one that I did notice, Dave, you commented on that I don't know if it's on here or not, was one that was logged by Ubisoft some time ago about adding ALS, which falls into the same bucket as adding external auth and adding rate limiting. Where it's an extra service that you can configure Envoy to use for logging. So it has all the same complexities around making sure that Contour surfaces things somehow. If we're going to allow people to configure something, we need to surface if that thing is broken as far as we can. And so, the
point that the point I want to make is that we have a customer who is actively using it and going through a really craptastic workaround. I don't have a position on whether we should or should not add this feature, but we should make a decision to add or not. As in, we either say we're going to do it in the near future, or say you're welcome to submit a patch and we'll add that, or we just say no, we're not going to add it, because being in this intermediate state means the customer continues to use their craptastic workaround when both parties are considering it to be a workaround. Yeah, that's the key. They thought it was a temporary thing. We've not given them any indication that it's not going to be. So what I'd like to see is it's either on the backlog or we close it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. So it's either we need to tell them something about it or close it. Yes, agreed. Okay, I think we're pretty much out of time. I've just got a text that I have to actually go. So I think I will call the meeting done there. And thank you everyone for your time. And we will talk again soon.
Thanks all.
Jonas?
Bye.